As a Michigan fan, tomorrow is all about Michigan and Michigan State. However, I would say that this is the game that, in my opinion, takes the next cake for me, despite the fact that I will be focusing all of my attention on Michigan and Michigan State. This game is interesting, and I wish it was on at a different time than Michigan State, because the matchup of two defensive powers who, by rankings, I wouldn't say by team, I would say Wisconsin's faced a better team in Michigan. By rankings, this is Wisconsin's best opponent, and Iowa has not faced a defense like Wisconsin's all season long. They haven't. Wisconsin's the best defense they have faced yet. And it's interesting to see how there's just some difference of opinion even on the ESPN website. So today I'm going to preview this game and give my prediction for it all the way at the end. So let's just get right into it and start off with what ESPN has to say on the betting end and the FPI end, which, as we both know, can be very deceitful and a very poverty source for predictions. The FPI gives Iowa a 53.7% chance to win. They give them the slight edge over Wisconsin, who obviously has the remaining 46.3%. The FPI favors Iowa despite Wisconsin's home field advantage, and the FPI does calculate home field advantage. Ignore my cat, whose collar is ringing. Anyway, Wisconsin here, though, is favored at home by Pick Center by 3 points. What I think is happening here, and granted Wisconsin opened as a favorite, I'm thinking the experts think that Iowa's on a downtrend, the Purdue loss demoralized them, and they're only that thought is the thought of defeat is further festering in their mind over the bye. Wisconsin's also on an uptrend. They just beat their first top 25 opponent all year on the road. They dominated them. I think that was easily Wisconsin's best win, despite the fact they gave up 2 turnovers. Wisconsin's looking better by the week. Iowa just got hit with a demoralizing loss, and it's the Purdue game for Iowa proved without turnovers, if you can not turn the ball over against Iowa, you can handily beat them. And Wisconsin, them not giving Mertz as many opportunities to screw up has been helping with Wisconsin's horrible turnover margin. And I think they forced 5 turnovers against Purdue, so their defense is stepping up with turnovers. That's my thought. And what I think part of the public thinks, because I know that a lot of people are calling for Wisconsin to win, they are using the transitive property. They saw that Wisconsin beat Purdue by 17 points and that Purdue beat Iowa by 17 points. And to them, that immediately translates to, well, if Wisconsin can beat Purdue by 17 points on the road and Iowa lost to Purdue by 17 points at home, well, Wisconsin's the better football team at the moment. And while I do think that there is some truth to Wisconsin being the better football team, the transitive property is no reason to explain that. What is shocking, though, and what should worry Iowa fans is that Wisconsin outgains Iowa by 55 yards in total offense. And they allow 78 less yards on defense. That right there should terrify you as an Iowa fan, especially with the fact that you lost the turnover battle against Purdue and Wisconsin won the turnover battle against Purdue. Now, depending on whether Riley Moss or your defensive backs who were injured against Purdue play, that's a whole different factor. Assuming Wisconsin is even forced to pass the ball and just doesn't run it up the middle and on the outside every stinking time. So let's get into comparing the positions. The interesting thing here is I think Wisconsin in general does have the more talented offense, but Iowa wins at what should be, in most offenses, the most important player. Spencer Petras has passed for 133, not 133, what am I spewing to you? 1,333 yards. He's completed 59.5% of his passes, averages 6.7 yards per pass, has 9 touchdowns, 6 picks, has been sacked 18 times, has a 124.3 passer rating. Mertz, on the other hand, doesn't even have 1,000 yards. He has 900 there. Got the correct 100 this time. He has 945 passing yards, completes 55.9% of his passes, averages 6.2 yards per pass, has 2 touchdowns, 7 picks, he's been sacked 10 times, and has a 103.3 passer rating. So, yeah, that's honestly. And from what I understand with Mertz, a great deal of those sacks did come against Michigan. And also, I think Penn State and maybe Notre Dame got one as well. I mean, they've played a lot of teams that do have, or did have in the case of Penn State, who now is an injured D-line. They played teams with good D-lines. They played 3 of them from what I remember. Mertz is obviously the worst quarterback, despite what I think him being a little more mobile and him having a better O-line. Even with all those factors, Petras is the better quarterback. Petras actually has a positive touchdown to interception ratio. Mertz, for every 1 touchdown he throws, he will turn the ball over 3.5 times. You round that up, he turns it over 4 times. And that's not even including the amount of fumbles he's coughed up. It's unbelievable. I mean, his play, his attitude, it's wrong. And it shows that the staff knows this by how they play. Against Purdue, they only threw like 8 times. They rushed all over Purdue nonetheless. They have so little faith in Mertz, the Wisconsin staff does. Petras had 1 bad game against Purdue, and granted, he's not a great QB, but there's a difference between average, which is Petras, and downright trash, which is Mertz. So Iowa here wins at the QB position. The rushing game and receiving game and O-line, I do have to give to Wisconsin here. And the receiving game's hard to tell because Wisconsin rarely passes the ball. And when they have, it's ended in abject disaster. But seeing, from my opinion, just talent and what Wisconsin receivers have done when Mertz doesn't overthrow them 10 feet, doesn't overthrow, and it ends up in a pick. From what I see, Wisconsin, I think, has the slight edge when it comes to receivers. I mean, you have Jake Ferguson, the tight end. You have Danny Davis, and you have Kendrick Pryor, these veteran names. And here, I think Nico Reganey is like a first-year starter. Sam Laporta is just coming in as well. And you also got Keegan Johnson for Iowa. That's just previewing the receiving position. Let's get to the run game. Now, Iowa only rushes for 3.1 yards a carry. Wisconsin is 4.7. And I think that right there tells you who has the better O-line and also who has the better running backs. Ches Malusi has 692 rushing yards for 5 yards average per carry and 4 touchdowns. Braelon Allen has 428 yards, rushes for 7.4 yards a carry, and has 5 touchdowns. He's followed by Isaac Garendo, who has over 150 yards and has a touchdown as well. Those 3, but specifically Malusi and Allen, are just amazing to watch. They tear it up through the ground. Someone called it a poor man's edition of Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum. And honestly, I might get some hate from Michigan fans and even from other fans saying this. We don't know which duo is better. I know that Michigan has the better O-line, but I know that if you're to compare these guys under the same circumstances, but just the duo setting everything else 50%, I honestly don't know who I would take. I don't think we know enough about, especially Braelon Allen, who just came into the vicinity of Wisconsin football, got some opportunities, and looks really good. Is explosive, knows what he's doing. And Tyler Goodson, for a play on words here, he is good. However, his O-line is worse than Wisconsin's, and he's only rushing for 4.3 yards a carry. He's taken the bulk of attempts with 136, and has the bulk of yards with 586 rushing yards compared to the team's 816. He also has 5 rushing touchdowns. Interestingly enough, though, you know, unlike Wisconsin, their leading receiver, who's a running back, is Ches Malusi with 66 yards. Tyler Goodson is the 4th leading receiver on Iowa's team with 178 receiving yards and a touchdown. Speaking of receiving, let's get to the receivers. As I already said, Wisconsin takes the slight cake here. Wisconsin is clearly better, I think, at the running back position and O-line position. Receivers, it's a little tight, especially because we haven't seen Wisconsin, pass the ball a whole lot. That's really the main reason. But Iowa, you have Sam Laporta, the tight end, who leads in receiving yards with 332. And he also has 2 touchdowns. Nico Reganey and Keegan Johnson also have a touchdown each and over 180 receiving yards. Wisconsin, their leading receiver is Danny Davis III with only 241 receiving yards, not even a touchdown. Kendrick Pryor has only 1 touchdown, 225 yards, and Ferguson is 202 yards. He doesn't have a touchdown either. There are only 3 receiving touchdowns for Wisconsin, and 2 of them were passed by Mertz, 1 of them were passed by Wolf, and both of them turn the ball over more than they score. And that right there is sad. So again, Iowa wins at the QB position. They have a slight loss, possible tie at the receiver position. Wisconsin, has that tie at the receiver position, but they take the cake with the O-line and definitely the run game. So overall on offense, I would say it's pretty even because the quarterback is pretty important, especially when, Mertz is more of an X factor for Iowa than he is for Wisconsin. So the offense, I don't know. And I think that it depends. I think that if Wisconsin leads, like starting the game they lead, the offense will, of course, benefit Wisconsin because then they can have their game plan. But if the run game isn't working and they fall behind, the Wisconsin offense is going to become really what loses the game here because they just turn the ball over. And although Wisconsin's defense is improving, especially at forcing turnovers, you can't let your offense put you in these bad positions and expect to win. You cannot do it. So I would say the offenses here, it depends on how the defenses are, in my opinion. That's what it all depends on. So let's check out the defenses as well. And then just to kind of determine whose offense I think will be better, we'll look at some statistics, mainly in the rush game. So Iowa here, their leader in total tackles is Jack Campbell with 64. He also has a sack, 3 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, and a fumble recovered for a touchdown. Lucas Van Ness, the defensive lineman, has 4 sacks and a pass defended. Joe Evans has 3 sacks. John Wagoner has 2 sacks as well. That's kind of previewing the leaders on their defensive line. And Iowa, as we all know, loves to pick people off. Riley Moss with 3 passes defended, 2 pick sixes, a fumble recovery, and 4 picks. Matt Hankins with 3 picks and 1 pass defended. And Jack Corner with 2 passes defended and 2 picks, along with Dane Belton with 2 picks and 3 passes defended. Iowa loves to pick you off. They have 16 total interceptions, along with 5 fumble recoveries. So they forced 21 turnovers. It's unbelievable. That is amazing. And granted, the Purdue game did not help that case. Iowa turned it over 4 times. They only forced 1 turnover. It's kind of forced in quotes because it was more of a fumble out of the end zone than Iowa punching the ball out, and they fumbled, Purdue did. But anyway, Iowa's defense loves to pick you off. They love to force turnovers. They love to capitalize off of mistakes. They kind of just sit there and wait like an alligator under the swamp. And when you get close enough, when you make that mistake, they chomp immediately. Wisconsin's defense has been something different. Wisconsin's defense doesn't sit there and wait for you to make a mistake. They just bludgeon you. And that is it can be better or worse depending on what you look at. The star of this defense, you cannot even deny it, is Leo Chanel with 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. Nick Herbig, another linebacker, has 3.5 sacks, 4 passes defended, and a fumble recovery. You also got Jack Sanborn, who has a fumble recovery and also has 1.5 sacks. So, I mean, there are 5 linebackers for Wisconsin who each have a sack. I mean, their linebacker core, absolutely amazing. And their defensive line, too. Wisconsin, from what I can garner, averages some crazy amount of rush yards per game. They only allow 223 yards per game. That's second in the nation, being followed up by Georgia. And they allow more points per game, but that is because of all their turnovers, etc. The interesting thing, though, they only allow 1.9 average rush yards per game, which is crazy. It's insane. You run that 4 times. First down, it's 2nd and 8. Second down, you get 3rd and 6. Then 4th and 4. And then, use 4 downs, you get 8 yards. It ain't going to work against Wisconsin. I mean, you can't expect to forcefully run it and get anywhere. Iowa allows 2.7. And that right there, I think, along with Iowa allowing more rush yards per game and allowing more rushing touchdowns, to me is what takes the cake in a certain sense. Because Wisconsin's the better rush team and the better rush defense. Iowa has, a worse rush defense than Wisconsin's that matches up well with Wisconsin's rush game. So if they don't have to pass, and this leads a little bit into my prediction, I do think that Wisconsin will indeed win this game. Iowa, to get back to the defense, Iowa has definitely the better secondary. I think, though, that Wisconsin has the better linebacker position. They have the better front 7. Wisconsin has the better front 7. Iowa has the better secondary. And what's interesting, too, is that means, Iowa, they have the better quarterback, which can translate to the better passing game, and they also have the better pass defense. Wisconsin, it's completely opposite. They have the better run game, the better rush defense, from what I can garner. And their style of defense is different, too. Wisconsin just bludgeons you. They force you to just kind of accept your fate unless you have more talent and can overpower them. And Iowa just waits for you to make a mistake. So it's interesting for sure. And once again, to bring up my prediction, I do think this game will be close. I think this game will fall into the category of maybe Wisconsin 20, Iowa 14, or Wisconsin 17, Iowa 14, maybe even lower. I could totally see a Wisconsin 13 or 12, Iowa 9 game. This game would totally be something that would result in that. And I just think Wisconsin wins because home field advantage. I think they match up better. I think that despite, Iowa having the better pass defense, Wisconsin's pass defense is still pretty competent. I mean, both of these teams have good pass defenses. Iowa's is just better. And both teams have average quarterbacks. So I think it will depend on who runs the ball more, and if it comes down to passing, who has better protection. And that combined with the fact that Wisconsin's front 7 is amazing, Iowa's O-line has had some weaknesses in it, this could be a game where Wisconsin leads from the beginning to the end. So with that, Wisconsin victory. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Join this awesome community. Help us reach 2,000 subscribers by the middle of November. It's amazing. We have a great fan base here, and I really appreciate it and appreciate the support and the continued growth of this channel. And comment your thoughts down below again. I love to have discussions with people. I love it when people disagree and agree with me, because difference of opinion is what makes this sport so beautiful. Again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.